Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District for Wednesday, September 6th at 5 p.m. And I guess we got to do the Pledge of Allegiance again.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. So, can I do the Director Hernandez?
I would be delighted. Ready, begin?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, roll call, please.
I am here.
I'm still here.
Here.
Here. Okay, next is adoption of the agenda for this regular meeting.
Move to approve?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, next is public comment for persons wishing to address a matter not at the agenda, may be heard at this time. However, no action will be taken until the matter is placed on a future agenda in accordance with board policy. The board is not permitted during this time to enter dialogue with the speaker. I've got one request to speak from Mr. Hunsicker for this portion of the agenda.
Mike Hunsaker, 115 Equestrian Court, San Marcos. And I was just wondering how the new master water plan was going. We're about a year behind and counting, and there's quite a few things that need to be addressed. One of the things that I've just put in a FIA request about is concerning the growing deficits in the water and waste treatment deficit accounts. I'd like to get some more information on that. And I sent that by email to Mr. Scaglione. And I'm willing to work with the staff to make that as painless and easy as possible. But I do think that if there's $25 million worth of debt coming our way, that should be covered in the audit report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe address a couple of those items really quickly. So we did receive the email from Mr. Hunsaker. We did offer to meet with him, and we will be providing any requested information that's required by law. And just to let the board know that we will be bringing forward to the engineering committee on Monday an update on the master plan, and I believe that's the document that Mr. Hunsaker is referring to.
Thank you. Okay, next is the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or member of the public requests a particular item be removed from the consent calendar, in which case it will be considered separately under action items. Would anyone like to?
Move to approve the consent calendar?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor?
One thing I'd like to bring up is that I met with General Manager Ann Rondi, and they cleared up all the questions I had on the district pay schedule. So I appreciate their time, their effort, and the board for allowing me to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay.
Moving second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carried unanimously.
Did we say something?
All right, on to action items. 2.1, approval of sale of Vallecitos Water District property to Brookfield Rancho Coronado LLC and annexation into the sewer service area. And that would be Rob.
Yeah, Rob's going to give a presentation about a potential sale of some district-owned property.
Thank you, Mr. Prum. Good afternoon, President Elefthart, members of the board. And I know Mr. Robbins excused himself because he knew I was going to get up and start talking here. Okay, first item I have for you here is the approval of a sale of district property to Brookfield Rancho Coronado Developments. We were approached by Rancho Coronado a little time ago. Part of their whole development here, it lies just north of our South Lake property, which we have approximately 44 acres of. And they have requested there that they purchase some property. As you see, we have 3 different parcels that they're trying to get from us here. And that's just little pieces here and there that they need for various reasons. Parcel A, which is the furthest to the west, they needed to put some drainage improvements, a brow ditch, a detention basin, and they needed to do some grading on that property. So we said we don't want to be responsible for that. Why don't you just go ahead and buy that portion of the property, do your improvements, and then you'll take it over. And then parcels B and C are little portions of properties that they needed to acquire for their road, as you can see there in black there on the figure. They needed to acquire that in order to do their grading and also for the slope embankments as well. They did an appraisal here at their expense to appraise the property. The value of the property came out to about $12,200, and that's for the total of 0.61 acres. As you recall here, they've also did annexation for the property about a year and a half ago. And so we told them, you're gonna need to annex this into the sewer district as well, since this is gonna become part of your developments. And so they will be responsible for the annexation fees of that 0.61 acres as well. With that, I'd like to ask a staff recommendation here to approve the sale of the district property per the conditions listed on the staff report, and I'd love to answer any questions the board has.
Director.
Yes, is the road a secondary access? That can't be their main access.
This is actually going to be one of their primary access points.
Really?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And then secondly, is this actual action this evening, is it time sensitive? By that I mean, I'm quite familiar, well, I'm familiar with the development. They supposedly had the plan on their website, but I couldn't get it open to find out exactly what it is, because the city is working with them relative to accessing the lake, and on their video, they have a video about the 1 mile loop on the lake and the trail to the lake, but I don't know if there's any other improvements that either they are making or that the city is making on the development of the lake. And so what I was hoping that they were gonna be here tonight and give us the whole show of what their plan is and how they're gonna do that, the other. That not being the case, that's the reason why the time-sensitive question.
They are proposing some improvements here per the city of San Marcos there. That's going to be probably on your southeastern portion, right about where the parcel C is. And that's basically a parking lot that they need to make sure that their access road adjoins with the city of San Marcos's proposed plan, which they're still working on. And they're proposing to have a parking lot up on the northern part of our South Lake property.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so where I'm going with all this is, what I would like to recommend is that, with discussion and obvious approval of the board, is that we sell the property to them for $1. And that we include, in addition to that, a 5-foot wide, 30-foot long floating dock with a 20 by 20 raft, a concrete picnic table with seats, an 18-foot long, 4-foot high commercial chain link fence with a 4-foot self-closing gate. The location will be determined by the City of San Marcos developer, the Water District, and that the ownership of all these would become a part of the ownership of these particular items, the dock, the raft, the gate, and the picnic table become part of the lease that we have with the city. You know that I've been passionate about the lake since I got on board, and I've followed this. I finally got acknowledgement from Isaac, the city engineer, that they in fact are working on this.
Yeah.
They have a plan. I haven't seen the final plan that they have in the engineering department, and the plan that was shown to me from the recreation department a year ago now, and that we had the general manager come and discuss relative to the timeline of all this taking place. And his timeline is working. We're in the fall, or going to be in the fall here next month. And that's what he said, with construction happening in the first of the year, which I believe to be true. But I don't know of these elements being in the plan, and I want them in the plan. And so I am not voting yes on the sale unless I am assured that these elements are within the plan, and I see our engineer behind you is being patient.
Good. James, you want to address that?
Director Hernandez, hopefully I can maybe answer some of your question.
Oh, good.
General Manager Prue and I actually met with the city on several items last week.
Last week.
Yeah, last week. And one of them, we were talking about the South Lake and South Lake plans. The sale of this property and the South Lake plans are two different items that aren't really interrelated. For the developer, though, Brookfield, they're being conditioned because they have a plan, the South Lake plan to their plan discrepancy. So the city's in the process of conditioning the developer to build a portion of the South Lake Park improvements. The board itself will have another opportunity to take a look at the South Lake Park improvements before they move forward in the future, whenever we get them, and actually review them. And then the board, it'll be a presentation to the board by the city on the South Lake Park improvements, what their final plans and final design and final schedule will look like. The sale of this property and the South Lake Park plan improvements are really kind of, they're not related. And also the board, there's another opportunity for the board to look at the South Lake Park improvements, to question it, to ask for items per the lease, and that's already kind of laid out in our contract with the city. What the Brookfield is most likely going to be conditioned to do is do the top entryway and the parking lot that is access to the park. And the only portion that Vallecitos is interested in is to make sure that our access to the lake is not cut off. So at the end of that parking lot, there's going to be a gate and a fence that both the city and Vallecitos has a lock to, so we could access it on a daily basis to check on the lake. And obviously that will be the future access that they'll use for the actual park itself. And from Brookfield's standpoint, for them, this is time sensitive. Because they're actually moving forward, unless they have the property, they can't move forward with their MU4, which is mainly condominiums.
Oh, good, because then this is gonna be easy peasy for them to agree to. And the problem is, we've been talking about this for 3 years now. We have not seen a specific plan, and you just said yourself, you haven't seen a plan. So I don't know what the plan consists of, other than it's gonna have access to the gate, there's gonna be a parking lot. If there are any amenities, we haven't heard about it. We've heard that there is been a set aside of $750,000, which seems like an enormous amount of money for a parking lot of 10 to 15 cars and access to the lake, because they're not doing anything to the loop. So I believe there's something there, but why no one has expressly presented that is befuddling to me as a board member, as a professional, and as someone who's passionate about the lake. So that's why, unless this is put forward now so that I can assure that these items are gonna be part of that lake, I'm not voting for the sale.
I understand. Just to be clear, though, the Brookfield development and the lake development with the city are two separate items that don't have direct relations.
Well, in fact, they do, because the city is gonna require a condition of Brookfield to do the parking lot. So
They're in the process.
there's a connection there for sure, and that connection involves our lake,
Yes.
which we lease to the city, so,
Yeah, I think, and for the city,
Thank
there
you.
is a connection. For
That's
us, for Vallecitos, there's no direct
my
connection.
pitch.
Director Ryan?
I've got a question. It just seems to me we're looking at $12,000. There's a third of an acre on one site, and parcel C, if we were to not sell them that parcel, would cost them an enormous amount of money to move that roadway. My question is, and we took their guy's appraisal on it. I don't know when the last time, I mean, I just hate to be the fat cat, or the district be the fat cat. When we buy land, seems to cost us $1 million an acre, and we sell it for 12,000. I just don't know if the value is more than that, and we don't have our own appraisal on it.
Well-
We took Brookfield's, the hawk watching the hen house, give us an appraisal, okay, thank you very much, that's good.
Let me go ahead and clarify the appraisal real quick here. This is the appraiser that we chose here. It's the same appraiser that we've used for our property purchases here. It's just at the developer's expense. So they paid for the appraiser to do the work.
And that's a pretty typical arrangement, that the agency would select the appraiser, but the developer would pay the costs of that appraisal.
Is that the same appraiser that appraised the 14 acres we have out in BFE?
It's the same appraiser that appraised and did the presentation of the district property right behind us, the 32 acres on the district property, the same two gentlemen that were here.
Right.
As you may recall, in that session, they mentioned, when you asked what other projects, government projects they were working on, they mentioned Carlsbad, Solana Beach, a few others, and they mentioned one they were almost done with for us. That's this project. So Vallecitos chose the appraiser, got the scope, the developer agreed to it, and put in a deposit to cover the expense. The contract for the appraiser was with Vallecitos directly, not the developer, and through the developer's deposit account, we reimburse ourselves from paying the appraiser.
So it's pretty much a done deal. I mean, here's a roadway in here that's been approved by the city, I'm sure. All that's already done. So this is kind of sweep up work after the job's done, is it not?
Well, Vallecitos wouldn't allow them to move forward, and we didn't want to gift public lands for a developer, so we insisted that they would have to get an appraisal, purchase the land at the appraised value, and then do a lot line adjustment so that those three little parcels would become part of their APN and no longer part of our APN, and when the map finally records at the end.
When I was out there on the tour, parcel A seemed to be where the roadway was coming up to our shack down there. Wasn't that parcel A, not parcel C? Parcel A is where the roadway comes off of their project, goes down a steep, which it's gonna be gravelled.
Yeah, Ed can address that.
This is the South Lake Pump Station. So this
Thank you.
Station lifts the water in Coronado Hills.
The shack.
The entrance to the lake right now is right through here. So we come in off of this road and we drive in right here. The entrance used to be, back when we did the tour, was up here.
Okay, so,
We came in from this direction, but now this is all blocked off, so we come in like that into the lake.
okay, so the entrance then, that we were talking about, is to the pump station.
This is to the pump station.
Right, so the entrance to
And
that,
our gate's been right here in the past, but it doesn't matter if we move the gate closer to the pump station, that's typical actually. The rest of our pumping stations where the gate's right there as we access the river.
are we requiring them to re-fence that pump station? It didn't look that sturdy to me, and now we're gonna have 1,000 kids on it.
We also have a new access road that Vallecitos conditioned them, so there'll be a new access road that's improved to that pump station as part of their development, because they're actually going to be cutting off our existing access road. And we're working with the developer now to ensure that as they cut off our existing access road to do their grading, they're supplying us with daily access for a pump station. But at the end of the project, we're going to have a new all-weather access road that's gated. And they're going to be purchasing the property that they're impacting for their drainage needs, and we're going to be retaining the easement rights to cross that property, so this way we're not cutting ourselves off.
And at what point in time are they taking over mending the fence?
Any fence that they actually destroyed, they have to fix.
But I mean, the ones that are getting cut that, you know, we've had people, our people have to go out and fix?
That's not addressed in this report at all, but yeah, that is a concern.
Oh,
of
so
ours.
it's still ours?
The fence line around the pump station's ours.
Okay, what about the fence around the lake?
I don't believe the lake is fully fenced.
Like it's,
Is it completely?
The lake itself
and
is
this one
fenced.
is normally cut by trespassers when they fish. When the city takes over, and makes the park, then my understanding is they'll be required because they're supposed to maintain.
In the lease that we signed with the city,
They share costs for maintenance.
they share costs right now for that fence?
I know we kind of, I'm not sure if it was something.
I would have thought we would have passed it along with the lease, but
Director Smith?
Yeah, kind of along the same lines as Director Martin. I was a little taken aback when I saw the dollar figure. I know that they're not selling quarter acre and 1/3 acre lots on their housing development for $12,000.
Sure.
So having not been privy to the appraisal and not being a developer myself, why do you guys think, or what did you read in the appraisal that gave you reason to believe that this is a fair price? And, you know, why is the land not valuable, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask. Is it on a slope? I mean, you can't really tell in this drawing here, but it seems like that's a very low number.
Yeah, it's undeveloped property, first of all, and yes, you are correct here. We are talking, most of it there is on pretty steep slope.
But flat enough for a road.
parcel C is not on a slope, it's a road.
Parcel C is going to be on a constructed road here, so yeah, they're doing a lot of grading improvements to make that work. Correct.
But you could, I mean, if you can grade for a road, you could grade for a house pad. I mean, hypothetically, right?
You could do that too, and that would increase the value of the property at that point too.
Yeah, I would imagine zoning is a big issue too. The property that we own isn't properly zoned for them to go do house development on it.
But
So
it's
which
going
would
to
increase
be-
the value per acre when you sell it.
Director Snell, to kind of address your question a little step further, the value of the land when it's a road is much more valuable than when it's just a slope. But to make it a road, you have to put money into it. So for us, it's just a slope. The developer is conditioned to put the money into it to knock that slope down to make it a road. So when the appraiser does his value, it's valued based on the zoning, based on the existing condition of the land. It'd be unfair to say, here's the improved portion of the land, and now you go improve it all, and also pay for it as if it was already improved. It's unimproved completely right now, so that's what the appraisal is based on. And since the zoning doesn't allow for like, really any type of growth or building on that site, it's not a high potential value, it's not commercial or residentially zoned.
And then my last question on parcel A, wouldn't that be right directly in line of the natural flow of the river that the future river we're gonna have that's gonna go to Discovery Lake? Is that gonna be a problem?
Thank you, Mike.
Yep, got your back, Jim.
Yeah, they're gonna be putting drainage improvements in.
Should we take our river underneath?
That's actually the idea.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, to culvert underneath.
Be one of those cool water rides.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it just seems low to me, but you guys know that, you know, you've seen the appraisal. I'm not a developer, so.
I would like to make a motion. And I recommend we sell the property for $1 plus the following: a 5-foot wide, 30-foot long floating dock with a 20-by-20 road floating raft, 1 concrete picnic table with seats, an 18-foot long, 4-foot high chain link commercial fence with a 4-foot self-closing gate. The location to be determined by the City of San Marcos developer and the Water District, and the ownership of these items to be part of the lease of the lake to the city.
All right, there's a motion, is there a second? Okay, seeing none, any other motion?
I'd like to move for approval as suggested and as recommended.
I'll second that.
And could I ask that as part of the motion, the board declare that 3 parcels are surplus district property?
Okay.
That's fine with me to amend that. Yes.
Okay.
I'll second that, but I do want to, as part of the discussion now, less discussion, but I actually am not necessarily against what Director Hernandez is proposing. It just kind of dropped it on us. So I got to get my head around that for a second and figure out, you know, who's responsible for maintaining the stuff that you're requesting in lieu of the purchase. And if your motion was to bring this back and give us an opportunity to kind of learn a little bit more about your plans and digest it, I think I could support that. But to outright, support it right at this moment, I'm not ready for that.
Director Martin?
And I would also agree. although we've discussed it, my understanding is that we're under a lease right now with the city. And the city, although I'm surprised that we still have to fix the fence, we lease the property to the city. They have full control of the property. I don't think it's something we can just throw stuff on them and say, this is going in the lake and this is going here. We can't do that. They lease the property. We don't have ownership. So unless it was more carefully thought out, and maybe some ideas floated out there, no pun intended, I don't disagree with what Jim's saying. Those are things we want to see there, but I don't know how we go about doing it. So I need more information to find out, how do we do it, or can we do it? Or is that really up to the city at this point, because they own the lease? I don't know the answers.
Any other discussion? Director Evans?
I'd like to say, Director Hernandez, I'm impressed with your options and your desire for the lake. I'm also going to say that I know you've talked about it a lot, but I'm totally unaware of anything that's been talked about, planned, or anything in detail. So I feel somewhat like Director Sinella saying it's a little bit drop out of the sky in our laps. And I also feel it's really important that we understand that we can prove a nexus between the development and this land and the lake. And what I heard tonight, I didn't feel that was there. So hope we bring this forward again sometime.
I definitely will, and I too am frustrated that we haven't seen anything. I mean, and I have talked about this on at least 3 other occasions, and we never see anything. I don't know what it's gonna take to get the city to send a plan that they are planning to the district so we can see what they're doing with the property.
Perhaps the city doesn't really want to do anything?
Well, that may be the problem, but believe you me, there will be a dock and a draft out there by Memorial Day next year. Mark,
I have a plastic dock.
you won't need a
Voted
plastic one. You won't need one.
Anyway,
Move on.
Okay, any other discussion? It's been moved and seconded to move staff's recommendation with a caveat that the property be declared surplus. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say no.
No,
Okay, carries 4-1. Thank you, Rob.
Okay, Rob's up here for the next item as well, and it's just an example of how the district tries to work with developers as we move forward with some projects that aren't always as clean as we would like them to be. So, Rob, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Fromm. As our general manager mentioned here, we did something very similar here to with the country estates, which was a Joe Jowdy property, and I believe we did that last year, or at least we attempted to here, and that's tried to set up an escrow agreement for the payment of their water capital facility fees. The Palisades Estates there, they're a proposed 222-acre development. They're proposing to bring their development in 2 phases. The first phase
I'm
being...
sorry, do you have a map you're gonna put up?
Yeah,
I'm-
I'm working on it.
Okay.
We have
Oh,
a new
sorry.
system here.
Oh, sorry. Oh, another new system.
Yeah, there we go. So the first phase here being 19
It's
units,
a lovely map.
which is what the escrow agreement is being proposed to cover here. So the issue at hand is the County of San Diego requires the development to have a water commitment form signed and executed by the water district here before that they can continue on with their developments. The problem with us is we can't commit water service until they pay their capacity fees. So what we did here, similar to what we did with Mr. Jowdy's property, is we're proposing to set up an escrow account with the terms that if the property is approved by the county, the development's approved to move forward by the county, then the district will receive the funds from that escrow account. And if the development is not approved by the county, then those funds are refunded back to the developer. So they have approximately almost $98,000 in water authority fees and $142,000 in district capacity fees. that they're proposing to put into this escrow account. And with that, I'd like to recommend staff recommendation here for approval of the escrow agreement, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has.
Any questions?
So we're looking at, in lieu of them actually writing a check to us, we're gonna give them the letter if they put this money into an escrow account, and the county approves it, then immediately comes to us.
Then the money will come to us.
And Mr. Scott will take care of that to make sure
Yep.
it's leak-proof.
And we've done this before for Pacific Palisades, about 9 months ago.
So
Okay?
there's no wiggle room on a developer's,
No, sir.
gets approved, push, we get the money.
Yep.
Move for approval.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to approve staff's recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item, I'm sorry. You wanted to speak on this item.
Oh,
I
dear.
apologize. I
You're
always
so
do that.
patient, too.
I just wanted to clarify, I got most of my answers in the presentation. I was just wondering why there isn't a sewer commitment that goes along with this, since sewage is going to be a bigger problem than water in some respects.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Hunsaker. Just to clarify on that, they're not proposing to come in to the Vallecitos Water District for sewer. They're actually, I believe they're proposing to do septic systems on this property. Yeah, it's well out of where our infrastructure is for sewer here. That would take quite an extension to make that work.
All right, thank you.
And if they ever did want to come back to us and talk about connecting, then that would be a whole new negotiation, and they would have to pay whatever those costs are associated with connecting.
Absolutely there. So if they wanted to come in and try to obtain a sewer service from us here, then yeah, we would go through the study process to determine the infrastructure required. And then obviously they would have to pay annexation to annex into our sewer service area.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. All right, item 2.3, billing adjustments.
Okay, I'll take that item. So the item in front of the board has to do with adjustments to customer bills when they are deemed necessary. This item was requested by the board at the August 16th meeting. It's informational only, but if the board does want to give any direction, staff would certainly be here to answer any questions. So with over 22,000 accounts, it's inevitable that from time to time, there are adjustments that need to be made to certain bills that come out on both the water side and the wastewater side. Incorrect billings result from a variety of reasons. Property uses can change. We can have equipment malfunctions. We can have illegal use of district facilities or theft of water. And sometimes there are billing system input errors, so on the district staff side. And the billing errors do include both underbilling and overbilling, so both happen from time to time. So when an error is identified, staff does ask the following questions. First of all, what caused the error? So what happened? What is the financial result of the error? Is it meaningful? How do we correct the error? What do we need to do to move forward with that particular billing error? And how do we prevent similar errors from occurring in the future? And that's one of the more important aspects of what we do. I'll give a few examples of some billing errors and how they may occur. So we may enter account information incorrectly. We may say that they have a different meter size, for example. If somebody has a 5/8 inch meter, we may incorrectly say that they have a 3/4 or 1 inch meter, so their ready to serve charge may be higher, and it may come to light down the road, and that person would be due either they would have to be paying more money for if they've been underpaying, or they'd be due a refund if they've been overpaying. Another example may be if a water meter stops working or it reads slower than it's supposed to be reading, so the billing that we send out is below what the customer was really using. And those are just a couple of examples of why an error may occur. So how we determine that an error has occurred can also occur in a number of ways. One is, a typical way is a customer may call and they may say on the water side, hey, my bill is outrageous, it's way higher than it's ever been. So we'll send somebody out, a staff member out, to reread the meter, and there may have been a misread on the meter reading, which resulted in an incorrect bill. Conversely, if we may have a meter reader out in the field, and he may notice that, hey, the meter's showing no usage, but the property is obviously occupied, the landscape is green and lush, so obviously they're using water, so there's a problem there. And also internally, from the customer service side and the finance side, we're looking at bills periodically and doing an evaluation and studying the accounts to see if there's anything that appears to be inappropriate. So for example, we may look at a bill and say, hey, this customer's bill went up, or their water consumption went up by like 300% this month. Why? What's the reason for that? So there's a variety of reasons where it may come to our attention. The district does not have a specific policy that addresses what we're supposed to do when a billing error occurs. So, but the practice that we follow is that each issue is handled on a case-by-case basis. We look into the specifics, and staff makes what we feel is the appropriate, takes what we feel is the appropriate action. So for cases where a customer has been overbilled, if we determine that, then we calculate the amount of overbill regardless of the time period, and we either refund that money to the customer or we'll provide a bill credit for the customer at their choice. They may choose to want it as a bill and not as a refund of money. So when the customer's been underbilled, we'll usually perform an analysis of the underbilling to determine how much it is, and we've consulted with our legal counsel, and we've been advised that we can go back no further than 3 years. So even though the customer may have been unbilled or underbilled for 10 years, we can only go back 3 years to determine how much they owe the district. So then at that point in time, the customer would be contacted and informed of the situation. They'd be informed of the amount owed, and we would work with that customer to develop a repayment schedule. If it's a very small amount of money that's only taken place over a relatively short period of time, we may request that that funding be paid in the next bill. If it's a large amount of money and it's something that took place over a long period of time, we would work with that customer to set up like a payment schedule. And my recommendation is if we went back 3 years for underbilling, we may want to give the customer 3 years to pay the money back and develop, easy monthly payments going forward. For cases of underbilling, we do not impose any fines or penalties. We don't say, hey, you've underpaid for the last 2 years, you owe us an extra amount. All we're trying to do is recapture the amount that should have been paid had the billing been done appropriately. And there's no interest charges. If we set up a payment plan, we wouldn't charge interest on top of that. So I don't think this should be viewed as a punitive action. It's just to correct the billing that should have been received early on. When you look at the number of accounts in the 12 bills per year, that's about almost 300,000 bills that get processed every year. But we have very few billing errors, and I think that's a testament to our staff, and we do a really good job. So I just want to give a general overview to the board of what happened, when billing errors occurred, what we do about them, and how we identify them. And if the board wanted staff to come back with a policy to address how we address those billing errors, we'd be happy to do so. Otherwise, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Not about this in particular, but, and this would actually be for Jeff. Wasn't there something with one of the hospitals where they've been under bill?
Well,
About
sometimes
like
it's,
last year?
sometimes it's too good to be true. I think it was Palomar, and I think it was Poway, and they got, all of a sudden their bill dropped to some, very moderate amount, and this went on for a number of years, and then somebody said, well, wait a minute, you guys owe us a lot of money here because you didn't pay your water bill. And so it was a workout. They worked it out, and I think there's an article about it in the union in the last 3 months or so that talks about what they settled on. But they basically.
It was a compromise? It wasn't the actual amount that they would have paid if they were being billed correctly?
Well, it was, I think they were asking for more than the 3 years, to be honest. I think initially that was the protest was. It was substantially more than 3 years. It went back like 10 years or something like that, and so.
Yeah, it was like 800,000.
Yeah, it was
Right.
huge, so
Got
they,
off one.
yeah, I mean, it ultimately was a compromise, but they took a much they tried to get a lot more, and go back farther with the hospital.
I guess so I'm assuming the 3 years is sort of an accepted standard when,
Well, from a legal perspective,
legal
it's
perspective.
what you can go back to.
so that's already been established.
Yes, that,
Yeah,
under the
I
court
appreciate-
cases.
yeah. Well, anyway, I think what we're doing is great, and I'm sure we don't have too many that go back 3 years. And I think it's good if we owe them money, we're also returning it regardless, so. Thank you for the information, I appreciate that.
Director Martin?
The last fine that, not fine, the last bill that we found was an error that we've talked about. How many years does that actually go back?
I think it was in the, I may look to my friends in finance, but I think it was over 4 years.
Which one was it?
I'm sorry?
Which account was it?
The sewer one with McDonald, I believe, is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, that was about 4 to 5
Yeah.
years.
But we only went back 3?
Correct. Yeah, the amount we calculated, notified the customer was for 3 years of underbilling.
You know me, in my mind, I'm just trying to correlate it to when it was sold to McDonald by someone else. If that's when the error occurred, or how would it slip? It's been a building that's been there for 35 years. I don't know. So the mistake was made somewhere between 35 years ago and today. What would have changed, I guess, is my question. I don't know. Could it be a change of ownership that would trigger that, or?
It certainly could. It could be a change of ownership, it could be a change of use of the property, those types of things. When an account switches, we look and make sure that the type of usage that is expected is what's entered into the billing system. And every time you do that, that's an opportunity for an error, a billing, an input, a data input error.
In this specific case, let me ask, because I don't know. I think the majority of this building is now a church.
There's a church in there, I don't know if it's the majority of the property or not.
Would that make a difference to us, or is it just all C, all commercial?
I think it depends on the type of commercial use. I don't know, I don't know if there's anybody here. It's all one flat rate for commercial, so it wouldn't matter the type of use.
No, that is the type of, that's how we classify
Right.
commercial, residential.
So commercial, a car wash, a laundromat, Kier Fought Singer, large manufacturing, use a lot of water, they're all C. All pay the same amount.
True, but we do have an ability to input in the billing system what we call the return to flow. So we'll look at the specific use and we'll say, well, that commercial use tends to have more or less return to flow. So what return to flow means, of the water that's delivered to the property, how much do we think comes back through the wastewater system, which is what we're talking about in this case, the wastewater billing side. So if you had a company that was, say, making bottled iced tea, most of the water that comes through is going into the bottle of the product that they sell, not through the wastewater system. So they would have a very small return to flow, as opposed to some other operation that we think that they're just doing some industrial operation and it's all being maybe washed down the.
Or an ag use, very little return to flow.
True, right. So when we enter that percent return to flow number into the database, that's another opportunity. And in this specific case that you're talking about, Director Martin, that's what happened. We entered an incorrect number. It was supposed to be entered into as 80% of the water would come back to the wastewater system, and we incorrectly put 20%, so the kind of the flip side of that. So for 4.5 years, that incorrect number was in there, and then during kind of a periodic review of accounts, we were looking at accounts that had numbers that were very different from that 80%, which is kind of a standard. That one stood out, and then we looked deeper into it and calculated out the underbilling.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
When there's a change in tenant, say in like a commercial strip center, is there something that triggers a relook at that, changing that percentage return to flow?
Yeah, I don't know on a simple thing like that. I've got a few hands raised.
Maybe
and,
something from the city?
I'll phone a friend here. Yeah. James, why don't you take a shot at it?
Yeah, Director Althorp, in the last about 4 years, we set up a process with the city for tenant improvements. So as people come in for new permits or business licenses or any type of tenant improvement, we reevaluate the use. So if someplace goes from like an accounting office to a restaurant, obviously the use will change, and we look at the capacity at that point. Do they even have capacity, meter capacity for a restaurant? Look at the return to sewer, and we adjust it and work with accounting and customer service to make sure that the most up-to-date information is in our system.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks.
Mr. President?
Director Snow?
Yeah, in this example that we're talking about specifically, has the customer been notified that we're going to be seeking
Yes,
some
the
additional
customer,
funds from this person?
we did reach out to the customer, and as far as I know, we have not heard back from the customer. I don't know if anybody has an update on that, but as of last week, we had yet to hear back from the customer. The letter basically said, sorry, this is what happened, this is the amount, and it didn't ask for immediate repayment. We just said, please reach out to us, contact us, and we can set up a kind of a payment plan. You know, my words, not the exact words in the letter. But
If the customer does not reach out, what's the next steps, considering that we don't have a policy that outlines what the next steps are?
we'll follow back up with them. We'll just say, hey, haven't heard back from you, and we would pursue the issue. Absent any other contrary direction from the board, we would continue to pursue it.
If the customer so chose to protest this, how could we fight it with no policy? And where I'm going with this is that I think we need a policy. And I'd like to, maybe leave here tonight with some direction that we start working on one. And as we always do, benchmark other districts to see what their policies are, right? So we don't have to recreate it from scratch. But I just think that we're on very, very kind of shady ground with this. If the applicant either just ignores the letter altogether or protests it, because we don't really have anything to point to say that, hey, this is how we handle these types of situations. I also want to be very mindful that while I want, it really bugs me that we're not, we didn't recoup the revenue from this waste in this situation as we should have. When we make these mistakes, albeit they seem like they're rare, they do have an impact on, in this case, the business community that we represent. And I think we need to be, make sure that we not only do a bit of a root cause analysis to try to figure out what exactly happened in this situation because it's significant, but secondly, we need to make sure that we have processes in place that that these things, we're really trying to limit these types of things from happening, if not eliminate them from happening, put in checks and balances, whatever needs to be done, to ensure that we're not, that we're A, executing with excellence, and B, not negatively impacting our customers.
Well, if they would like policy, as chair of the policy committee, I'd like to schedule a policy meeting with you, and my
Okay.
cohort and I will sit down and discuss this with staff. Which I think might be you, Jim.
Okay?
Okay, all right. That's all the discussion on this item. Move on to reports, the general manager report.
Yeah, I've skipped three. First one, just I recently notified the board that staff would be performing some nighttime work in San Marcos Boulevard to do some repairs for a water service connection. We were unable to effect the complete repairs on the one night that we had available to us, so we will have to go back out there. The date is to be determined. We're coordinating with the city to put up, get another window. Just want to let you know on that. And we'll, just like we did the first time, we'll put some information on the website in case anybody wants, if somebody monitors our website, to know when we'll be out there. Just another thing, in order to protect our facilities and the health of our facilities, we will be re-roofing the facilities on this property, with the exception of the building that you're in, but all the other flat roofs will be re-roofed. The contract is, I believe it's awarded, and the contractor is mobilizing, and work should begin pretty soon. So you may see roofers around the building. Yes, sir.
Is that the first time we've done this?
I'm gonna look to, first time? Okay.
And we've been here 15 years anyway, huh? How many?
20.
Yeah,
98?
19 years.
19 years. That's pretty close to a 20-year roof.
That's pretty good for a flat roof.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty
Okay.
good.
And is that the kind of warranty, guarantee that we're seeking this time, a 20-year type of roof? Thank you. Very good.
Good. And the last item is just a reminder that our next meeting on September 20th is our public hearing for the water and sewer rate adjustments. So I just want to remind the board members, it's an important night, and staff will be ready that evening. And the meeting starts at 5 o'clock in the board chambers. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. District Legal Counsel.
I have nothing tonight.
Okay. San Diego County Water Authority.
Well, tomorrow, I was trying to get the link and it hasn't been sent yet, but the county of Imperial County and the IID and the Water Authority will be presenting at an upcoming the Salton Sea Workshop tomorrow, and they'll be pushing that the state will come forward on that the State Water Board will move forward on implementing the 10-year plan to improve the Salton Sea. At this point, we need it because the QSA has been tied up by that and getting our water from the Colorado River. They've been trying to tie mitigation waters to our receiving water. And we did it for 15 years and fulfilled our obligations. And at this point, the state needs to step in and do what it should have done for the last 15 years and work out a restoration plan. So we're all excited about hoping we can get them to move quickly with it. And the plan is that they will, in the 10 years, cover 30,000 acres of playa, which is the exposed soil. And they've discovered that, yes, the Salton Sea is going to be restorable, but in a different manner. And that the air quality, of course, is not just because water's not been there, just from us, it's everything else. So, very important meeting tomorrow, and hopefully they will go well and then pass that and jump on it on September 19th. And then in regards to that, I know you are aware we're trying to get water bonds going. And it looks like the one that's most likely to move forward is SB5, which is by De Leon, and that's a $3.8 billion general obligation bond. But they're hoping in that one it will give $280 million to the Salton Sea. And then they're also pursuing AB 18 by Garcia that would put $300 million for the Salton Sea. And then the one by the Water Authority, which was through Hueso, and it was 701, would put $500 million in a general obligation bond for Salton Sea. So there's the typical, we have to keep pursuing because we get them to agree, but we can't get them to come up with the money. So we're hoping those will go. However, I think 701's been put on just yesterday or the day before was put on the 2-year bill. The little Hoover, I'm going to pass out your what's hot here. You'll see the long-term water efficiency use issues. I know you're familiar with that, but sorry, I don't think you need glass pages. And what was the other thing? Oh, and then you all know the public goods thing was turned into a 2-year bill. At the last Water Authority meeting, there was a presentation on that, and everyone was quite nervous about it because it keeps changing, and they thought it was going to be pushed through. But the 2 years gives us some breathing space to work on that. And finally, the other concern was we had a presentation from MWD, is it Richard Patterson? He talked about MWD's thing about the water fix. The most interesting thing in that was that MWD has basically not put a limit on how much they're willing to commit to make the water fix happen. They're talking 25%, but in this conversation, they said, well, he said, well, we'd like to get told we're willing to pay 25% of it. They don't have any of the state contractors, water contractors have agreed to it. There's lots of agencies that are already saying they'll pull out. We don't have any way of knowing how much water we'll get. We don't know how much it will actually cost. And we tried to get him, so one of the questions was, well, do you have a final point at which you'd say it would be an absolute no, like 35% or 40%? And he said, no, we've not considered an ultimatum. But they're asking everyone to vote at the next meeting on supporting it. So the Water Authority is in this dilemma at this point with the delegates because they want to vote. If they vote no, they're voting against the project. We're not against the project, we're against the lack of information. So then do you abstain? Because it's it's really touchy, and you were going to, you've heard
Well,
something more.
I was gonna ask you, the percentage being considered isn't the only issue, it's the total cost of the project as well.
Oh, no, it's not the total issue, but that's what they're saying. Oh, no, you're gonna buy it and we'll figure out the cost and it'll never go beyond that. So would you agree? So even if you said I agree to 25%, we don't know what 25% of.
That's what I'm
either.
saying, that's what I'm saying.
Exactly. And it's just like pulling teeth to get the information from MWD. I mean, I think it sounds almost like they want to be the water district of the state in so many ways. And there's not even any guarantee that, it doesn't really give us a lot of water. It gives us a little bit more water, but not.
It's buying reliability with no
Yeah.
guarantee of
Yeah.
quality.
Right. Just like buying the islands, and now they have the cost of maintaining the islands up there in the delta. And they never told anyone about it. So it's very, very interesting. But it's, as you know, September 15th, this session ends, right? For the 2017 legislative session ends, so we'll see where we're at. And I think that was all the news I had on that.
All right, thank you. Encino Wastewater Authority, Capital Improvement Committee.
Not till the 20th.
Okay, and I didn't attend the August Policy and Finance, but I believe you did, Glenn.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the topic was there.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
It was finances.
No? Do you remember what the item was? Because it was right before I went to the CASA meeting. I don't recall what it was now.
That's okay.
Yeah.
All right, standing committees. I believe there was a Finance Committee on August 30th.
Yes, there was a finance committee on August 30th, and I'm suffering from general manager syndrome.
Okay.
We had two items that we discussed, one at length. Well, one was at length, the other one was pretty short. Do you remember?
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of them was the, I believe, the pay, right? The pay scale and
No.
everything. Remember?
Yeah, miscellaneous fees, that's right.
Oh, miscellaneous fees.
Miscellaneous fees, thank you very much. Miscellaneous ad nauseum were discussed, and we decided to listen to staff. Was it John to give a presentation?
Yeah,
Or
John.
was it?
Well, John and Wes and Mike were there.
Yeah, it was a good job. We understood the fees much better after it came out and how we're using the formula, and it makes sense, so thank you very much.
And if I recall,
Excellent meeting.
they're gonna be coming to the whole board at some point, right?
Right,
Yes.
yeah, it'll come to the board.
Okay. All right, thank you. Directors' reports on meetings, conferences, seminars attended. Start with Director Sinella.
Yeah, I've been in 3 states, but nothing to do with the water district, so I have nothing to report.
Okay. Mark?
You started at the other end, I can cheat off of
All
that.
right.
No, I have to tell you, all the minutes I have with the finance bid, they're sitting on a table at my house. And they're not here, because I did attend one day on the 17th of one of the seminars, and then 3 days at I believe it was CASA, but I don't have the notes with me, so I know Jim was there.
I was there, I was diligent in every aspect.
All right, you're gonna cover for now.
Yeah, I'm
Urban
gonna
Water.
cover for Hal, you're gonna owe me the
UWI.
per diem, Hal.
UWI. UWI.
Urban Water Institute, heavy again on direct and indirect potable. Wastewater, big on wastewater. It was very informative, and well attended. That was the 2.5 days that were there, and then they had the CASA dinner, and out of the dinner came a discussion about the future video contest. We have since had a committee meeting, which I'm part of the committee, and they're trying to determine, because at the dinner, it was discussed that they want to broaden that further beyond the video, art, photography, and so at the committee, we tore that apart a bit, and I told them I would ask, because of the knowledge of Director Martin and the photographic opportunity to do a contest, whether this district and I and Director Martin would be interested in shepherding that. they indicated to me that there were a number of other districts who are doing photo contests, and it kind of withered down to, they didn't much care if we, well, it wasn't that they didn't care, but they didn't keep going, yeah, that's a great idea, Jim, come back, let us know. So I'm a little bit soft on the discussion, particularly if other districts are doing it, why would we do it with the 8 CASA? So I think I'm gonna let that one just kind of drift off into the netherland. Then, of course, there was the conference, the CASA conference, and again, that was very good. A lot of good information came out of that, and well-attended, and a 3-day conference there.
Yes, I was at the Special Districts Quarterly. He was at, and they had a very interesting presentation, very tidy one on the sand day. Kind of put him on the spot a little bit about the finances and that, but they did a great job and had the great brochure, and I should have brought you one because it was very, thought I did, no. But it was good. I did not get to go to the Urban Water Institute, but I did do CASA. And what I enjoyed the most at CASA this time was I did the columns on the 218, Proposition 218. It was really interesting because the first one was an attorney explaining where 218 came from and kind of the reasons of why it happened and where its focus was. But then they had a panel of 4 different districts that talked about the 218 process they'd gone through. And I'm so sorry, I'm like Director Martin, I didn't bring the paperwork, but I want to say it was either, is there one called East Bay or
East Bay Mud.
East Bay Mud or, one of these had it took them almost 2 years to get through the process, but they did a very big, I want to say it was like a 20% jump. And through that process managed to pass it with very little. And the one I was most impressed with was a small district. It's near Petaluma. It's not Petaluma, it's not Napa, Sonoma. It's a little one up there. It's about our size. It was only like 20,000 accounts. They had not had a rate increase in 10 years. And they had pipes that were over 100 years old that needed replacement. He said their reserves there weren't. And they had, out of their 22,000 people, they had 2,400 come up against them, which was a high percentage. They did massive exposure, massive explanations, talked about it. They got over a 50% increase. Nobody did a 1 or 2 year budget. Everyone was 3 or 5. And they all talked about how the stability of why they picked the longer ones. And I so wish I'd have had time, but it's the break, and then they all leave, and we come back here at the next session. You get to talk to the speakers about, they were little and big districts, but how they were working that, and all of them felt if your constituents know and really understand and get it, they understand why the increases are there, that nobody really does expect it to be for nothing. They just need to know why. And then one of them also had their public outreach committee woman speak about all the things they've done in public outreach before, but it took them, a while to build it. It was very, very impressive to see how they had to just really bite the bullet. So that whole day was a very fascinating one for me. Then the speaker was, I want to say it's Joaquin Escobar, something like that, who is the new representative on the Water Control Board.
Mm-hmm, yep.
He was very interesting, and from having only heard 2 others before directly on that board, I felt he's new, and he's very much open-minded, he's educated, and he's very eager to learn. He admits there's a lot to learn, and he definitely knows we are a regulatory agency, and my job is to regulate, but I felt he was trying to say we need to reach out to the local people and maintain that. So hopefully we have someone on the good side. That was great. I went up to him afterwards and talked to him just briefly, and I did ask him if regulations was his number one thing, and he said, well, you know, it is, but I really feel that it can be done at a local level. That's where we need to start. And he did feel that his comment was, everyone should be entitled to water. I don't know exactly how it should be paid for. So it wasn't like some people I've talked to that said, everyone should get it and you all should pay for it. So hopefully he's not going to want to push the public charge. But that was a treat to get time with him. And then, not that it's probably really critical but to you, but one other meeting I've been attending about every other week now is with the Water Conservation JPA, because the Water Authority is part of the Joint Powers and I'm their delegate. And we've finally gotten us to a point where we're actually are coming to agreement on a new operating agreement and a new approach to making the garden more sustainable, which has always been the issue. It's always been kind of weekly done. So it's been a very interesting process as well. And thank you for your indulgence.
All right, thank you. Dr. Mark?
One more that I thought of, that jogging my thought, was at UWI, Urban Water Institute, they spent a day on P3s, public-private partnerships. And I came back and I spoke to our general manager about it, and apparently we're looking at that right now and using it, for instance, for the solar farm. What I thought was really great about this, number one, they're experts in the field. We don't have to spend our staff's valuable time, which should be water dedicated and bathrooms, doing that. We have professionals that are out there doing it every day. And what they get is half of the savings. But the plus part is that when those little batteries start popping or start smoking, all our people do is pick up a phone and say, hey, you got smoking batteries. You have absolutely no risk. And that's the biggest part, I think, of doing these things, is the amount of money you're gonna put into it, the amount of money you're gonna get out of it. You gotta have staff to be able to take care of it. So for half the savings, it makes a lot of sense. And the GM and I had a long talk about it, and hopefully we're headed in that path with solar, as well as other things in the future. So, thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, 4.1, there's information in the package on the WEF San Joaquin River Restoration Tour. 5.1, Director's Comments, Future Agenda Items. Start with Director Sinella.
Nothing here.
I have one thing in tonight's discussion. Thank you, Director Hernandez, for bringing it up. And I know we've been through this exercise before, so I will pardon myself. But we have a lease with the city of San Marcos on the lake. And understanding tonight that we're still mending the fence on the lake tells me we don't have a very good lease agreement with them. If we're,
Sorry to interrupt. If I could make a comment on that. We actually pay 50% of the cost of the lake maintenance. So if we repair the fence, we recover 50% from them in the lease agreement.
oh,
And I was going to provide a copy of the lease to the general manager.
that's okay. That seems a lot more fair. So I will resend that, because I know at one time we were all given the lease to read. Because
Oh, yeah.
there was questions brought up, and I don't remember anything about that. But if they're paying 50%, well, that continues on the life of the lease?
Yes.
So 50% will be ours, even though they'll have total control of it.
The lease states it's $1 a year plus 50% of any maintenance cost that we have. So we bill them annually 50% of the costs.
Oh, great. Then never mind, don't use a future agenda item. Thank you, Wes.
As a comment, we had a presentation today at Encina relative to recycling. It was an excellent presentation. I don't think, well, they did come to us and have a discussion, didn't they?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
well,
they're
they
here.
refined it even further, and I'm happy to report that San Marcos is the #1 alternative with the groundwater, and going to the Twin Oaks connection for water. So
For the number one what?
the number one alternative as to what to do with the recycled water that is going to be created out of Encina from the 20-plus million gallons a day that we're sending out to the ocean. Turning that into recycled, indirect, and direct potable water and sending it someplace. And the options are desal, of course, the desal plant, the reservoir at Olivenheim, up to San Elijo district, and out here to San Marcos, and the connection into our groundwater, and also a connection into the Twin Oaks raw water pipeline. So very interesting, still in the stages of looking at what's going to take, but we're headed for $3,000 an acre water.
Do you want to be number one?
What's that?
Do we want to be number one?
Do we want to be number
We
one?
are number one.
That's the question that's being asked about the overall desire of whether Encina by themselves wants to be a recycled facility, reclaimed water facility, or are they're looking for partners, and/or through the North County Coalition, are we still looking at isolated sites for ourselves? So the balls are still moving around, but the study is being done, and it's gonna be more input, more cost.
Just from my opinion, I think Escondido is a much better site for recycled water.
Where we're gonna, what does Escondido have to put water to?
Oh, I don't care. I just think they're better.
You don't,
better
well, you don't
users.
have anything, you don't have any idea what you're talking about then, do you?
No, I just, yeah, I know, I don't want it.
Well, you don't want it because you don't know what it is. Oh, my God,
I know
hell.
recycled
Sometimes I
water
worry
is.
about you. Moving on.
Director Evans, you have any comments?
No, I think we're keeping our agendas really full as it is, so unless it's really critical, you probably won't hear me mentioning anything.
Okay.
You guys are covering it quite.
I think we're out of agenda items, so we hereby adjourned.
Excellent job.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.